You know what it is, Reggie, yeah? Because there's times where, you know, when I done a documentary, KG was like, yeah, you know, Mo, you're the new Reggie Yates, bruv. You're the new Reggie Yates, bruv. You're gonna be in Africa holding the baby, holding the baby, And it was really funny. And there's a part of me where I was like, oh, I wonder what Reggie Yates thought about that. If you've seen it, I don't know if you've seen it.
No. Oh, did that go out? Was that on it? You're gonna be the new Reggie Yates.
That went out.
I didn't see that.
But again, I get a lot of people that would say, oh, you're the new Reggie, cuz.
Honestly, I think that's sick. First of all, I think it's a double-edged sword because completely selfishly, I don't want anybody to say you're the new anyone because you're Mo.
No, 100%.
You're not me.
Yeah.
You're not anybody else. You're not anybody that's come before me or anybody that's come in around that's been around you. And you're you, and you are unique. So I would hate for anybody to call you the next anything, me or otherwise. But I think what was said in love, and that is that there is a certain I don't know, a place that he's put me. And he's saying that you are there, or you're surpassing it, or you're going there, or whatever. And it's a positive thing because I found myself in spaces that nobody like us has ever been before, and you are in spaces that nobody like us has ever been before. So in a way, he is right. You're doing what I've done and continue to do in your way, and that's flipping beautiful. But you're not me, you're you. And I don't want anybody to ever confuse you with Munya or me with it. Do you know what I mean? It's like we all work too hard to be called the next blah blah.
Yes, yeah.
You know, you've worked so hard to be you. How dare anyone say you're the next blah blah?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? No, let alone me. So I think in a lot of ways, it's a beautiful thing that you are breaking new ground and you're doing things that no one else has done. And you know, if they are saying that, because I've done a similar thing, you're the new me, then sick.
Yeah. Because, you know, the people I always get compared to, Richard Blackwood. So either be Richard Blackwood or yourself.
Okay.
So, I think that they've always been the names that people said, yeah, bro, you're basic. Because especially having, you know, when you get that shiny floor show, you know, again, when I started doing the documentary, I dated back and it was like, oh, wow, Richard was the last person to have a show 20 years ago. And when I watched Richard's show, I needed inspiration, but I needed inspiration from a place where like, I can't get inspiration from, you know, the shows that are on now because they don't look or sound how I'd want my show to sound. So that's where I started watching a lot of Richard's old show, and I was like, oh, cool, man. Yeah, man, that's the kind of vibe I want. And I said it to Richard recently, you know, your show was a show by black people for black people, in a sense. It's a show when, you know, watching it back, you see some of the old clips, and it's like, right, this is people who don't normally get to go to a TV show, who are going to a TV show and feel like, like I'm here. I feel like I'm at a real show, not just I'm going to laugh and I'm going to clap and all that kind of stuff. But when I started to get into that kind of documentary space, especially, I watched a lot of your documentaries.
Oh, well, okay.
And I think the main inspiration I got from watching your documentaries is that sometimes you go into real challenging places, right? Or you talk about very challenging things, but you do it in a beautiful way where you feel like I'm with you on this journey.
Right.
Now, every person who makes a documentary is different. You know, Louis Theroux I feel like he likes to prod a little bit, asks questions and sits back. But I felt when I was watching Reggie, because I'm like, right, like being a black man in the space that you're in, like some of the places you've been, I'm like, does it change the dynamic of making the documentary automatically?
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm not making as much of them anymore because I'll do things so long as they're challenging. I'll do things so long as I'm learning. The minute I stop learning and it becomes muscle memory, I'm not interested anymore. And documentaries are a beautiful thing because you are forced to learn if you really care about the process. You can wing it, and some people do, I won't say any names, but you can actually learn and actively expose yourself in the process for the right reasons in the right way. Yeah. And that way people go on a journey with you. And that's definitely what I did in documentaries around the world. But now the challenge that I am sort of putting on myself is to tell our stories holistically. So like outside of me going, okay, I'm going to go to a corner of America where there's been a race issue and make a documentary about Mike Brown, for instance, right? Great. 1 million people have done that. I'm going to do it my way. What does it look like if I sit down with my laptop and I write a script about race that challenges people in a way and that speaks to my personal experience, but I craft it so beautifully that when you watch it, you feel something. And when you see it, you see faces and you see experiences that speak to yours in a really beautiful way.
Yeah.
How much will that affect or change the conversation? How much can that shift the narrative outside of me turning up somewhere with a camera and hoping that we have an interesting and challenging moment caught on camera? So my attitude has shifted now in terms of where I see the power lie in terms of storytelling. There is an amazing thing that can be done from making a documentary, but in terms of writing and directing a drama, a movie or a TV show, that for me is the exciting thing. That for me is the new challenge, and that's where I am now.
And some of those documentaries, one of my favorite ones is when you went to South Africa.
Yeah.
And you visited the church, because that I've been to South Africa, and for me, I remember when we first was because I was out there doing football coaching. So before we went, you know, like we're with this charity and stuff. We had this talk. He said, you know, guys, if you do get kidnapped, you know, it was all these things. You know, they had insurances. If you do get kidnapped, you know, this is the amount of money that we can have for any kidnapping and stuff. And it's like, right, like we're just there to do football coaching.
But it's real though.
You guys are really scaring us right now.
Yeah.
But then when I got there, I was like, wow. South Africa for me, and I'll always say this, is one of the best places I've ever been in the world, because there's a lot of people, especially where we went to Joburg, just outside a little place called Cosmo City. Yeah. So how Cosmo City was, basically, it was a white guy who had loads of land. The government bought this land off him. Loads of land. Then they built basically housing developments on it. And then how it is, it's kind of put up in like districts as such in South Africa. So what you can kind of do is like buy a bit of land and you can build your house on it. So within this area of Cosmo City, there was people that had wicked houses. Then there's other people that are basically living in small sheds. Like that is the difference of it. But there's a supermarket there and there's everything else there. But it's basically land that was there as nothing, and now there's people there. And I think the beautiful thing, what I liked about South Africa, that they didn't need anything. You know, sometimes I was at a stage when I was really into my trainers, collecting my trainers. I was close to like 200, maybe 300 pairs around that time. I'm buying double pairs, triple pairs. You know, Nike saying, boom, we're doing these exclusive ones. I'd go there, camp out. And that was all I was focused on, was like, I need the exclusive ones right now. And going there at that time was a huge shift, because I was like, I'm sitting there with 300 trainers in my house. Some double pairs, triple pairs. Whereas people over here, they don't even care about that. They're so not bothered. But I think the beautiful thing I loved about it was that was my introduction to South African house. Yeah. And listening to this sound, which was like, rah, this is a vibe. Everyone just liked it. Going to parties out there, had a braai, did this bit of meat, some pap, and that was it. And I was like, this is it. This feels like utopia a little bit. It's the closest thing I think I've ever got to for like a Wakanda. Now, that sounds like a big statement, but everyone was just happy doing their own thing.
Can I completely blow your mind on something? Because you've touched on several things that have happened in my life in one story that's really, really mad, right? So I've been to different parts of South Africa for the documentaries that I've made. And the first doc that I made was in Kenya, right? Kibera, the biggest slum in that corner of Africa, right? Yeah. And I was living there for a week. I made this documentary, came home. At that time, I was living in Highbury or whatever. It was a 2-bedroom house that I had, right? And when you walk in the door, you had the guest room. And that was where I kept all my shoes. And at that point, like, I was savage. Like, you know, you said that you're into shoes. Like, anybody that knows me knows that I was into shoes, and I've come out the other side now. I don't really play that game anymore. But at that point, I had about 3,000 pairs of shoes. And I kid you not, that's not...
TV money was good.
No, but this is the thing, right? I grew up with nothing.
Yes.
And Puma, Adidas, Reebok, and Nike were all giving me free stuff.
Yes.
So of course I'd say yes to everything.
100%.
And then I would buy everything. And this was before sneaker culture is what it is now. So it was either crooked tongues or nothing. And if you know sneakers in London, you know about crooked tongues. 100%. And if you know Magdi, you know about like what he did with slamming kicks and blah, blah, blah. And just like what was built around that community was beautiful, and it was a community, and I was part of that community, and I had and bought and did this, that, and the other. Anyway, I came back from this slum, and I walked past this room, and I came back and I looked in this room and saw 3,000 pairs of shoes, and I felt sick to my stomach with myself. So I made a call, And the next day I had this guy with a white van come round and I said, take what you want. And they took 2,000 pairs of shoes from me. They just literally threw them in. They didn't know what they were. These are like rare Jordans, Espo. My Espos went. You know what Espos are? No. It's an Air Force 2. You know what Air Force 2 is?
Oh, yeah.
It's a clear plastic Air Force 2 that Pharrell designed, and it comes with a blue sock.
Boy.
They went, everything, original flipping ice creams, everything. Like all of that era, all of them went in there, and they were just taken to Kibera and they were given to kids, right?
Yeah. That's so mad, because that's what I've done with my crepes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you recognize that those things that you have are ridiculous. Having 3,000 pairs of shoes, regardless of what your story is. I used to wash my trainers every week because I only had one pair of Reebok pump. Whatever. I wasn't the only one that came up in that way. 100%. I wasn't the only kid that came up on single parent, like flipping free school dinners, whatever. I'm not the only one that went through that nonsense. But that doesn't justify me going, I'm going to have everything because I can't have everything. And from that point on, like my relationship with consumerism just sort of shifted massively. Don't get me wrong, I love clothes, I love shoes, but I don't take every free thing that's given to me. I don't buy every pair of shoes now. And a lot of that came from my experiences on the documentary, because we talk about poverty in this country, and then when you go to somewhere like a slum and you see poverty, it just redresses the balance and you recognize how privileged you actually are. Like even the fact that we have a welfare state, you know, it just, like we had free school dinners. You know, I was around kids in Kibera who, if their parents didn't have money, they didn't have dinner, period. You know, they couldn't afford to go to school because school ain't free. So it just really just put a lot of things into context for me. And the shoes were symbolic, you know. I still had 1,000 pairs and I'm still getting rid of them now. I've still got like a couple of 100 pairs of shoes. I don't need a couple of 100 pairs of shoes. If you're a size 10, holler at Mo. He'll connect us. I don't need it. I don't want it. Do you know what I mean? And
7.5, 8.
and honestly, I think documentaries can be a really beautiful thing in terms of what you share with the audience and what you learn with the audience. But if you don't take something from it yourself, it's a wasted opportunity. And I feel as though I've learned as much as I can from that, which is why I've pivoted to something else now.